thank everybody for coming to the April meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. So let me start by introducing our guest for today. So Matt Johnson, PhD, is a speaker, writer, researcher specializing in the application of psychology and neuroscience to branding. Following his PhD in cognitive psychology from Sorry, I moved something. From Princeton University, his work has probed into the science of brand storytelling, experiential marketing, and consumer decision making. He's the author of the top-selling consumer psychology book, Blindsight: The Mostly Hidden Ways Marketing Reshapes Our Brains, and published in 2020. And most recently, Branding That Means Business, which I added to our Goodreads to be read list. So hopefully we'll get that one going sometime. And that's from Economist Books. Came out in fall of 2022. In 2023, Matt was inducted into Thinkers 50 Radar as one of the top 30 business thinkers with ideas most likely to shape the future. And he shares that there is another member of that class that we've spoken with before, Peter Bregman, author of 18 Minutes. So we had Peter Bregman on here several months ago. As a columnist for Psychology Today and a contributor to major news outlets, including Forbes, Business Insider, and BBC, Matt regularly provides expert opinion and thought leadership on a range of topics related to the human side of business. Matt is passionate about helping brands harness insights from neuroscience to better understand, serve, and interact with their consumers. To this end, he consults with a wide array of organizations, including as an expert in residence for Nike. How's that for a brand? Matt currently resides in Boston, Mass., where he is a professor of psychology and marketing at Hult International Business School and an instructor at Harvard University's Division of Continuing Education. He's won several teaching awards, is recognized by Poets and Quants as one of the top 50 business school professors. Matt grew up, as he told us earlier, he was from the Bay Area, California, has lived and worked in San Diego, New Jersey, Berlin, and Shanghai. So everybody, please welcome Matt. And Matt, thank you. It's great to have you here. And if you'd like to say a few words, we'd love to just say hello.
Great to be with you, Chris. The introduction I think kind of covered really everything. But as Chris mentioned, originally I'm from the world of academic neuroscience. My research really focused on how we essentially take in the raw sensory signals from the external environment, how we interpret these, how we build these rich inner worlds that only we can experience. And then ultimately how we share these ideas and concepts in the social environment. And really now for the past decade or so, my work and research and writing is really focused on this intersection, which I'm just absolutely fascinated by, between neuroscience and marketing. Marketing, as you all know, is extremely broad. I consider myself really more of a branding guy. So I'm more sort of upstream. I love tactics. I think pricing is fascinating. I think advertising is fascinating. When companies and brands ask me for my opinion, I'm happy to give them on pricing and tactics and advertising and product placement, et cetera. But I really see my influence as being a bit more upstream in terms of the formation and the preservation and the evolution of the brand identity and how we can utilize psychology to really best position the brand in the mind of the market, and really understanding this interplay between consumer perception and brand psychology. So that kind of brings us up until now. Chris, actually, if you wouldn't mind just kind of tell me a bit about this group. Because it seems like a fantastic community that you have. I would have loved to have been a part of it. I'm a huge nerd for marketing books, so I'm sure you've read some good ones.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Matt. No, thanks so much for all that. That's wonderful. Like I said, we're really happy to have you here. So we have had this marketing book club since about 2020. We've read almost 50 books, I think, by now, and we are so happy when it's so great when we have an opportunity to speak with the author. The people that are represented in this group are many people are in library marketing. So many people are in different types of libraries. You have academic libraries, public libraries. I think I don't see today. Sometimes we have law libraries represented, but and also we have some people that are from like I guess what I might call library service organizations, or sometimes from vendors. So, like Jill is from a consortium that provides marketing service and a lot of different tools and advice, and not just about marketing, but about a lot of things for a whole group of libraries in the province where she is in Canada. And Angela Hirsch is she said she's a representative from a company called Novelist, which is a library vendor that has different products and services. Angela has worked, did spend many years in a public library, and now she has taken that and moved into a vendor. So you have people with, different types of backgrounds and skills and experience. Some people always planned to be in marketing. Some people became marketers because that was where they either gravitated to or were voluntold to do. And you also have different size departments here. So some people have, like I have a team of about 6 people. Some people, they're, flying solo. So it's a really different, it's you have a lot of people, a lot of different experiences. But what we always talk about, and anybody else can please jump in and let me know anything else that I'm kind of missing. But we are always talking about the challenges that we face in library marketing. And certainly there's some notes that I took while reading the book that I'd love to talk about today that address those specific challenges or bring up some things. But so libraries, we feel, as we discuss them, we feel like library is a little different. It's not a retail model. We don't have cash coming in the same way. So branding is actually, a huge, huge, huge part of what can make the difference in a library, whether it's a university, public, special, whatever kind. So that's a little bit of an overview of the group. Does anybody have anything to add? I talked a
Cool.
lot, so
No, I appreciate
um,
that. I know you'd mentioned some of that via email,
yeah,
but it's
sure.
it's great to hear a bit more about it. And I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of our public libraries. Always have been, especially as a father now of 2 small kids. I mean, it's
yeah,
just an amazing community resource. Basically everywhere I've lived, I think it's been underappreciated by the people that live there. It really is like the
feel that.
original WeWork. I mean, you have everything that you could possibly want in a public library. Every time I feel frankly a little bit disillusioned with anything happening in America, et cetera, et cetera. You walk into a library and it's like just a great reminder of how amazing humans can be. And really it's an incredible distillation of just our commitment to civic order and education and the exploration of ideas, et cetera. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of public libraries. So anything that I can yeah, anything that I can, dive into that you're curious about that maybe intersects with your world. Yeah, happy to explore. You're fighting a good fight.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, it's like I said, it's a very interesting industry to be a part of. It is, I think we all feel a lot of pride as being part of this industry, and yeah, we want to make it a good place to be. Um, so yeah, and so usually what I do is I throw out this question first, see if anybody has, if any of the readers have any just a general, like, what were your thoughts about the book? Anybody want to jump in, and whether you just want to open your mic, or if you would use the reactions down at the bottom and raise your hand, that would be great. But what'd you think of the book? Hey, Jill.
I love the way it was written first. There's a lot of like pop culture references, and it just like felt like you learned a lot, but it was also like nice to listen to and kind of like enjoyable. Um, I learned a lot about my own spending, like Michael's, everything's full price all week, but the weekend hits, and I'm like 40% off. Like I'm like, yeah, that's okay. So it was, I enjoyed it.
Nice.
There was also a lot about technology trends that were interesting, like the idea that like companies will put us into ads and we'll see ourselves wearing the clothes in our own targeted. And that is just terrifying and reminds me a lot of a Black Mirror episode. I don't know if anyone saw that, but I'm sure Matt probably has because he even references Black Mirror in the show. So I'm like, yes, cool. That's me.
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been kind of interesting to see now going on, 3.5 years, sort of what some of the implicit predictions of the book was and how that's been sort of borne out. And, for better or worse, some of the anxieties and fears that we had in writing the book about the sort of the creeping influence of technology and marketing, particularly with marketing personalization, has been borne out to a certain extent. Obviously, we didn't predict generative AI, but that really poses a to have a huge influence on personalized marketing, because nobody's really more persuasive than ourselves. And as we get into generic advertisements, generic types of persuasive tactics, that's in aggregate persuasive, but everybody's different. Everybody has unique, sort of susceptibilities and unique things that resonate with them. And the more marketing teams, especially availed of massive data sets, can personalize their approach, really, I think the more persuasive, these campaigns and advertising material can be. And there's lots of converging evidence now that that's the case. So yeah, well, thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, I think that was great, Jill. Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, it was. And Jill, you listened to it also? You listened, yes?
I did with Hoopla.
Hoopla, yes.
Yeah, I used my mom's library account because my library system doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, I don't know if you're familiar. Hoopla is a service where, well, I don't know if it's like this in all libraries, but in many libraries, if the book is available, everybody can check it out. So it's pretty cool, at least in many library iterations. So it makes accessible a lot of the books that we have. So which is great.
No, it's great. Yeah, we have Hoopla here, and I've used it for several years as well. So no, it's a great service for sure.
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah. So, yep. And yes, as you see, it was very popular. Anybody else have just an initial kind of impression of the book?
And critiques and negative comments, totally fine as well. I've heard it all at this point, so no need to hold back.
Like,
I'd agree with what Jill said. I really, I came into this book thinking of library marketing, and I'm really walking away with a lot of information about myself and, and how I respond to not just different advertising, but also all of the information about pleasure and the brain. And I mean, that feeds into shopping tendencies too, but anyway, it's very, very interesting. I'm still trying to think really about how the book will change my library's marketing. But I went to a Frisbee tournament and a couple weeks ago, and I was helping with the concession stand. And we did a sign that was the drinks were $2. And I was like, we should make that $3 and then cut it back.
yeah,
And the first day someone came up and they were like, wow, already on sale? And we were like, yeah, it's a good deal. Anyway.
that's awesome. That's a great example.
Yeah, I mean the pricing stuff is fascinating, I think, because we tend to think of money as being like this is the one like objective thing in marketing. Like a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. Like money is fundamentally fungible. But as we've seen, countless times in the research, $100 is $100, but it doesn't always feel like $100. If you're, buying, a car for $40,000 and they tack on $100 fee, that's absolutely nothing. But if you buy a pair of jeans and they tack on $100, that's like going to stop you in your tracks. And it still is the same amount of money. And that's really one of the ways in which marketing systems do get us regularly to devalue our own money and get us to overspend is sort of numbing this pain of paying. So yeah, that was the hope in trying to include those tidbits there is marketers already know this because it's ubiquitous, it's very common practice, but I think the median consumer, why would they know this? And so just laying it out there in a popular book and just, yeah, giving people more of an understanding of maybe what's going on when we're given these types of scenarios and pricing schemes.
It did make me wonder about, which I know this group has discussed before, but about libraries, everything is free for customers to use. And whether somehow we're hurting ourselves, like our value by not, by being free.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it is such, yeah, an incredible corpus of resources at one's public library. And the fact that it is all free, I think does probably, in a psychological sense, maybe lead at least some citizens to discount that. If by contrast, you imagine a scenario where it's like, hey, we have every single book ever written in human history, and you can get that experience for $1. Like that's, that would be, psychologically at least more valuable, right? Or you have it like, here's what it is valued at. Like these books are, $10 each or whatever. And now it's, with your library card, we bring that $10 all the way to $1. And then you get that $1 back if you return it on time. So it's free. In practice, it's still free, but it's framed, the pricing's framed differently. And yeah, I mean, and again, as I guess a municipal service or a county service, you're probably very tightly regulated. So I don't know how much leeway you have in, branding yourselves. The mayor, the local mayor, the local, political bodies may have, something to say about that. But yeah, no, I think you're right. There is something psychological there for sure.
We could do what Anna did, and we could just put like a big sign up, every book is $25, and then cross it off and say free.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do that. Might be
Not a bad solution.
kind of interesting. People would have a conniption, I think, but it might be fun. Maybe we could do it for April Fools next year. I think I might try that. I don't know.
On our library system self-checkouts, when people check out books, they get a receipt, and like at the bottom is a tally of all the money they saved.
That's great.
There you go.
I don't know if that drives circulation, but it might make them feel more spending savvy or something.
Yeah, and this was like one of the first notes that I had from when the book is like, Matt, you talk about in the book, you all talk about anchors, and that's what I was thinking, like, what is the thing to anchor our service to? Like, I mean, is what is that? Is there something in libraries that we can anchor that price to, so people do feel that that kind of reference point that maybe we don't have, and that always seems to be a challenge. It always seems to be difficult because it's it's hard to, I mean, do so I guess I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I mean, are there any organizations that do have services that are like, no cost or free, and how do they anchor? Can you anchor to, later on in the book, you talk about, like you talk about things aren't free anymore. If you're not paying with your dollars, you're paying with your attention, or you're paying with your time, or you're paying with something. So is that something that maybe to anchor against, or anchor, I don't mean against, but like anchor compared to, is the time, the availability, the accessibility? I mean, do you have any thoughts about that?
That's interesting. I mean, I can't think of any organizations that are, it's a free service already, and then they anchor it to something. But maybe there's something there in terms of like, these are your, tax dollars, right? So the median person is paying this anyways, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it's like, this is what you're getting. This is the argument that's been made with getting people to pay taxes just generally, right? So like the median American pays something like $45,000 in taxes, and I think that's obscene. But what do you get? You get libraries, you get healthcare, you get roads, you get schools, you get all these things for 45,000. I mean, that's, you know, incredible deal that you'd never be able to conjure up on your own. And people don't really realize that ROI to a large extent. Though I don't think people really like to be reminded how often they pay taxes, or, you know, that's definitely some pain of paying right there as well. But yeah, definitely an idea worth playing with for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Carrie, I'm sorry, I realized I totally stole your question in the comments. Whoops. How can we take advantage of MSRP or anchor pricing? So yeah, which was true. Like, yes. Carrie, have you ever done anything? Oh, I don't know if Carrie, if you have a mic to speak with today, but yeah, if you have any ideas or experience with that, it'd be cool to hear.
We have the same at the bottom of the receipt how much you've saved.
Mhm.
But that's, you know, that's for customers we already have. And I was trying to figure out if there's maybe one of our databases that businesses also subscribe to, that we could kind of use that as an anchor point to attract in new customers, patrons. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just it that was like the biggest thing that stuck out to me with the first half of the book that I've read so far, is that I've been trying to noodle over, is how could we make that work? Because I think that's something we really, really need to do, because saying things are free just doesn't cut it.
Yeah. Carrie, I think you have a good point though. And Matt, that's, we do have some things that well, obviously, I mean, books, yes, you have to pay for books and a thing, but there are some other services that, and I think about that, Carrie, too. There are some other services, like our library has LinkedIn Learning. So it's a subscription that normally we'd have to pay for. And I think a lot of libraries do, and we have, and a lot of libraries also have their local newspaper. Like ours, you can get a photo, or the photocopy is actually better. You can get a photocopy of that day's newspaper pretty early in the morning for free. So, is that where, is there something about anchoring against those subscription prices or something? Yeah. The other concept in there is that middleness concept. And Anna, that was kind of what I was thinking when you were talking. It wasn't exactly that, but it was that other kind of middleness. And that was another thing that I thought for libraries. We sometimes we have I don't know if this is it, Matt. So, but a lot of times what people want are the most popular books, and those are the ones that are very, well, they're very popular and they're very difficult to get, and you get on a big long hold list. So, I didn't know if the concept to middleness might be able to extend to something like a read-alike, where you're not reading the most expensive book, you're reading a middle book. But I don't know if I'm using that concept right now that I say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something there though, right? Because like people do want to read, like, the New York Times best-selling books and like this new great Malcolm Gladwell book that came out or whatever. But at the same time, people do have this drive for distinctiveness. So this is in social psychology called optimal distinctiveness theory, where, we do want to, optimize in certain areas, but we also want to be distinct. And so if you have, a big popular book like a Malcolm Gladwell book, just as an example, what are the other books around this sort of like constellation of this book, which would be sort of in the same category that we do have, that, may not be the book, but they're much more distinct. And so it has that kind of, cocktail party appeal. Like everyone's talking about Malcolm Gladwell. Well, have you read such and such and such? That's maybe a little bit less well known, but is going to be more distinct and is going to be more unique and is going to carry that kind of like social cachet. So yeah, I don't know if that's something that is really of strong value and your consumers, is sort of this like social currency of books, but that might be worth taking a look at potentially.
Yeah, it's definitely well, I believe that, yeah, that idea of, yes, of that social currency of books, and that idea of getting some of those, and providing some of those, I think is a big service that libraries offer, is this, read-alikes and what we call reader's advisory. I think it is something that, and I think, again, it has some different value to it. So I think that that can be pretty useful. Yeah, Michelle, you said you're a Goldilocks purchaser. Purchase the middle. You purchase the the
I
middle.
definitely, if there are 3 price points, I always buy the middle. This book helped me see that.
You're in very good company.
Strong concept.
One
Yeah.
thing,
Go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, one thing that kind of strikes me is I don't know if it's a big area of sort of unmet need or something you're thinking about in your libraries, but sort of like active recruiting of like new members to the library. I imagine like
Yeah.
people like me who are like already converts, like I go to the library regularly, I love the library. But one thing that we found in marketing, we didn't get into this Blindsight. I got into this in my next book, Branding That Means Business, is this idea of sort of group level marketing. Whereas if you recruit any given individual to say come to the library, what are they going to do the first time they see a great ad or a great piece of content for the local library? They're going to go to their friends and they're going to be like, hey, there's this great thing called a local library. And what are their friends going to say? In most parts of the country, they're gonna say, "Oh, you go to the library. That's a nerdy thing to do." You get all what's called in social psychology as all these countervailing influences. And when marketers are trying to really promote products that are likely to have these countervailing influences, when they're marketing taboo products or products that go against social norms, what's often most successful is actually recruiting as a group. So having like a night of the library where it's like bring 5 friends and get something free or whatever. So you're recruiting as a group. Everyone comes to the library. Everybody gets to see the resources. And now when those 5 friends leave the library, now there's no countervailing influences, right? Because all of those people have seen the value of the library, and nobody's saying, hey, you spent all day at the library. That's a nerdy thing to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, I wouldn't be saying that. I am the nerd already at the library, but I know these sentiments exist, and I imagine you do as well. So yeah, it's something that is very effective when it comes to these, again, these very sort of like taboo topics, or when you're trying to convert people from one social norm to the next. Sort of growing at a group level can actually be more effective. And the inspiration for these tactics actually came from World War I, when they tried to recruit people to fight in World War I in the UK. They first tried to approach people as individuals, and the call to action for going to fight in the war is like, hey, do you want to go and potentially die? No, of course I don't want to do that. But then they switched up their approach and they started recruiting at offices. So they'd try to recruit like an entire like floor of accountants. It would be like 20 accountants. And these are all your friends, they're close social ties. Do you all want to come together and take this valiant leap with us? And we got much higher subscriptions. So thankfully for bringing people to the local library, it's not quite the ask of going to war, but there may be some initial resistance there. So recruiting at a group level may prove beneficial.
That's I look forward to reading that book so much. But yeah, so that idea then, is there, I mean, so is there more about like the size of group or what bonds the group that that made a difference? Because so for example, let me say, we've talked about things like, oh well, what about well, here we go. So one thing that we did a few years back, and I think other libraries have done this, I'm sure other libraries have done this, we provided a card to all Duval County Public School, that's the county we're in, Duval County Public School students. So we didn't give them actual cards, we turned their IDs into library cards. So now, I mean, and I know I'm really exaggerating this example. I mean, we're really blowing out this example because yes, this is a group of all students, but we have had, maybe because of communication reasons, but other things, we've had difficult time because the group is so large and is tough. So I think we've had more success with bringing in classes and things like that. So so is there something about like the size and the bond of the group that might make it work better? It seems like smaller. I didn't know if there was any further research on that you might have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some research on it. I think the biggest insight, though, is it really depends on the sort of level of camaraderie within the group. And so if there's like potentially like 10 really good friends, then 10's the number. If there's 5 really good friends, then 5's the number. But there's no sort of magical effectiveness of going from 5 to 10 if the 10 in that scenario doesn't have that camaraderie. But whatever the level of social complexity is, but you're still getting the strong social ties, and these are people that are going to comment on your life, and if you said you tell them that you spent all day at the library, they're going to have something to say about that, then that's sort of the level of groups that's worthy of targeting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I guess that does show why, when certain smaller groups that we've had more success in getting them engaged in using the library than just a giant, organization that has looser ties. So, but yeah, I think that's excellent. I think, trying to find, I took a whole bunch of notes there. Anybody else that has anything, please feel free to jump in with your questions, thoughts, or for Matt.
This conversation that you were just having kind of reminds me of, it was making me think about how a lot of people use the library as kids and then they don't as adults, and it seems like this disconnect, like they don't realize that the library is still for them and it's different than it was, etc. And I was just thinking about all of the chapter about nostalgia marketing and wondering if there's something there for libraries, because lots of people have fond memories of the library as a kid, and just don't connect that to, I could use the library now. Unless maybe you have kids, but
right. Yeah. That does seem to be the path, is like, you use the library as a kid, and then there's a little break when you go to college, or, when you're in that upper grades and all that. And then, then if you have kids, you bring them back. But sometimes that's one path, and sometimes the path doesn't get there. Matt, in the book, you also, that was the one I was thinking. I don't know if Anna, this was the same, like the Apple Jacks. What was it, the Apple Jacks video game, and getting them really involved in the brand early on. But Matt, what are your thoughts about that, associations from the beginning, and what kind of things might help somebody spark that those memories again that may bring them back to the library?
Yeah, I think that's a really good connection. Nostalgia is this really incredible force in marketing that we do see again and again, this kind of like the warm glow of the past that we're conjuring back up. And we do, as humans, human psychology, memory is very kind. And so the warm memories from childhood last a lot longer than the negative ones do. This is, just kind of a principle of human resilience, right? If you have a bad experience as a child, you tend to forget about it and move on. But the warm memories, they do last longer. So yeah, I mean, I do think there's probably ways to kind of position the local library in a way that that kind of conjures these memories up to a certain extent. I mean, asking people to remember the first time they got, I don't know, lost in a book at their public library, or discovered something new, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, maybe using that to kind of position the value of the library to the adult potentially. Maybe there is something there. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be Anna, right? Looking to the adult and seeing what kind of what you can connect them with. Jill, did you have something?
Oh, I was just thinking the whole Barbie thing that came out in the summer. I kind of jumped on that bandwagon and did like a Barbie library card theme. So we did get a Barbie Land library card, and they got to like get their picture on it. So it was kind of like made it personal, and we had a Barbie scavenger hunt and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was fun. Now I'm trying to think of all the other 90s stuff that's coming back, like, I don't know, Babysitter's Club, Ninja Turtles. So many remakes.
Definitely left there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the great like childhood books that came out in the 90s, like the what was it called? The Goosebumps series that like really got me into reading when I was in, first grade, second grade. Now I'm getting my young son into that as well. Yeah.
That's nice.
It strikes me, Chris, as we were speaking about the kind of social aspect of the libraries, that there may be kind of I'm just totally speaking off the top of my head, but kind of a parallel between, you know, the local public libraries and if you guys remember, Google had this kind of failed social network, or they've had several failed social networks, but the last one, this was Google Hangouts. And what now
Yeah.
it's been, you know, kind of studied. And one of the things that's been pointed out about this is that, you know, one of the reasons that it didn't do so well is because everybody had it. Everybody that had a Gmail account automatically had it. And so you know that everybody has this thing, and yet nobody or next to nobody is utilizing it. So if you're thinking about this as a non-user, you know that everybody can have it, and yet very few people do have it. So you put two and two together and you think, well, something must be really wrong with this thing. And my worry is that it's maybe the same thing for public libraries, that you know it's this free thing that's for everybody. Everybody could go to the library, but you look around your real life social network and very few people, not named me, are going to the library. And so implicitly, I worry that maybe there is something, you know, in terms of the person's sort of cognitive dissonance that leads people to that same conclusion, that everybody could do this thing, very few people are, therefore something must be wrong with it that I just don't know about yet. And so, you know, the way that tech companies have historically solved this is they make this exclusive, right? So Gmail, when it first came out, it was a privilege to have a Gmail account. Now everybody in the world can have one, and 2.5 billion people do. But in the very beginning, it was this exclusive thing. You had an invite. You felt very special when you had it, and that helped build up demand for it. So obviously, as a public good, it can't be something that's exclusive. But if there's, I don't know, things that can be done where you're invited to an exclusive after hours thing at the library, or, you know, in the case of Barbie, an exclusive library card or something to maybe, you know, make them make certain elements of the library experience, you know, rarefied and special to a certain extent. So yeah, I don't have a set you know, sort of, you know, knockdown recommendation for it, but I do see some parallels there potentially with Google's social network.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Yes, and I think, I think Jill, I think if you, you know, if you did have these Barbie cards for, you know, especially for a certain amount of time, you know, we all have all, you know, libraries. And I'm sorry, Jill, I don't know if it's celebrated in Canada the same library card sign up month. Is that also September? Is that September everywhere in like North America, or
October, I think it's
October?
for
Okay.
us, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't recommend going with the brand probably, because technically there's
Yeah.
like we were talking to Mattel for a long time, but it was going to take way too long, so we didn't get their official blessing. But I think like just putting your face, like getting like personalized library cards, if you have funding to like get a machine or something, and get people's printed on it, that would be nice. I don't know, personalize them, get their dog or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you did, Jill? You just kind of like printed them on demand with a card printer?
It was more like crafty, but we don't have a card printer, so we got them printed and kind of put them on cards.
And put them on. Okay, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Hey, that's great. That's very economical. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really good, Matt. And Matt, that's really interesting. Yeah, with the Google Hangouts, that there is some exclusivity, and you're right. I think it can be tricky for us to really lean into exclusivity in general, the library use, but there is really something about that. I mean, we have, you know, and I think a lot of libraries, uh you know, have the same situation. We have 660, you know, well, we have a big county, but we have 660,000 library card holders. We have maybe 150,000 who are actually active, meaning they've used their library card in some way in the past year. Um, you know, now it's, you know, some of these other 660, I think many of them might think like, oh yeah, I have a library card. Some don't even know that they have a library card. And some people that don't just like to still think that they have a library card. But there is something to, you know, I like that idea. Like, how can we, you know, do something that makes somebody feel a little special, a little you know, unique. And Shauna, so Shauna is saying, does targeted marketing, is this, Shauna, are you talking about targeted marketing do this kind of exclusivity, like you're part of a group, or you're part of, you know, when you do So yeah, so what Sean is saying is just targeted marketing, do this for people. Like, could this be a way that people could feel special? A library newsletter just for a niche group of patrons, like those who love anime or gardeners, or would that can that be a way? Again, I know Matt, we were just talking extemporaneously, but to develop like a sub community, would that be maybe a path?
Yeah, I could certainly see that being helpful. I mean, sort of as this big macro trend that we're unfortunately experiencing is this sort of loneliness epidemic where we really lack a lot of these in-person communities, and we lack the nourishment of the in-person community that we just can't get through online interactions. And in many cases, the online interactions we have are actually very do the opposite. They're sort of like the fast calories of, they make us feel full in the moment. We get some Instagram likes, but longer term, it's just not the kind of, doesn't bring us the sustenance that in-person meeting does. And thankfully, post pandemic, now I mean, I guess Chris, you never really went through lockdowns in Florida, but
not exactly. We had some, but
a little bit, but
it's still
yeah.
outdoors, but yeah.
Right. But yeah, now we can, we're free to have these in-person, meetups. So yeah, the more, I mean, obviously the library serves so many functions within the community. But I do think there's this implicit craving that people are having for in-person meetups where, maybe it's just to, get together and talk about anime or gardening or whatever the case may be, and it can centralize around an author talk or a set of books that have come out or whatever the case may be. It can be very low tech, but it just gets people from the community together that may not otherwise interact, but for this shared interest. And yeah, I'm actually working with a few startups in the Bay Area who are focusing on trying to develop solutions for loneliness. And there is very strong evidence now that people have this kind of implicit craving for, in-person meetings. And it's kind of like we're ships passing in the night. Everybody wants this, but we're just struggling at the moment to find this. So again, the public library serves so many functions, so I don't want to put that on the public library as well. But I do think that, maybe it's a great opportunity to bring people together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just anybody by nods of head or whatever, like so in the past, I think in the past like year, maybe 18 months, our book clubs have been doing great. And we always had a lot of hard time doing, book clubs weren't always like consistently successful. There were a couple little ones, but over the past, year, I would say year, 18 months, the book clubs, especially the in-person ones, have really taken off. And they're not, they're still at like book club size, like 10 or 12 or so, but they've been consistent. People have been coming and they've been, developing more, and we have more and more, and they are growing in success. Is anybody else experiencing that? Does anybody else notice that with book clubs in the last, recently? I see a couple. If not, trial book clubs. They're really nailing. Yeah, Michelle, that's part of our role is connecting people. Yeah, that's definitely what it is. And and yeah, the regulars at the library, that that is it is a big meeting place. And Shauna, in-person program attendance is up. Even though doing fewer programs, that's really interesting because that people wanting to come to the library not for an organized program, but just to join. Leslie, your book clubs have been growing too in the last, recently. Yeah. So yeah, Matt, they're definitely, that's cool because there is, getting more people out of some reason. Yeah. Yeah, Shauna, if you can figure out what that reason is, that would be helpful to keep marketing on. But I think, it could be,
Great.
again, to Matt, what you're talking about, like more people, feeling lonely and trying to find places where other humans are, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that all important third place that it's harder to come by.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially if it's a free third place. That's
Yeah.
we can lean into that. And we just have a few minutes. But if anybody else again has anything, please jump in, drop it in there. But Matt, there was something that I also well, there was a couple things. Well, one thing at the end of the book I loved, and I don't know if this is just how your world is, but you mentioned the world is only how our brains experience it. So doesn't that feel a little matrixy? Is that part of kind of being a neuroscientist, is feeling like this is all possibly the matrix and you're just creating it all in your head?
A bit, yeah. I mean, that's yeah, I mean, really the only reality we can experience is the one that is conjured up into our own phenomenological experience by virtue of this transmission from sensory intake to perception to interpretation. And yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's good reason to think that the internal phenomenological state that we're in isn't just specific to us, but we can come to a general understanding of shared physical reality, that we understand that there is an external physical reality. The way that we experience it internally is going to be idiosyncratic to a certain extent, but generally converging on the same reality. But there's now some really interesting research. I don't know how far you stray away from traditional marketing books. There's a fantastic book about the neuroscience of consciousness that recently came out called Being You. It's from a neuroscientist in the UK named Anil Seth, and really fascinating. He's a really nice guy as well. If you don't have time to read the whole book, he has a fantastic TED Talk. Something along the lines of like your brain hallucinates reality, which is actually not too far from the truth, because what we're coming to understand more and more about the neuroscience of consciousness is that it's this really interesting interplay between our sort of top-down expectations of what we think the world is and sort of the bottom-up sensory signals that we're getting for the environment, and then our subjective reality sort of meets somewhere in the middle. And so, yeah, it's a really fascinating field. Yeah, we got to touch on some of that stuff in Blindsight. So I'm glad at least some of that resonated towards the end there.
It was really cool. I think it was great. Yeah, and we have read other books that are not directly marketing. I mean, this one kind of isn't like influenced by Robert Cialdini, which is sort of related, but not totally related. It's a lot of similar to, as Michelle and I passed me by in the beginning, but Michelle said, I think it was Michelle who said it kind of aligns well with that book. And we read that book not too long ago, The Influence, which I'm guessing you're familiar with.
Yeah, no, it's
the work of Cialdini.
It's a huge compliment to be spoken of alongside Cialdini. So yeah, it's an absolute legend.
There was one other thing in the book when you're talking about Daniel Kahneman, and yeah, Daniel Kahneman comes up a lot. And it was the idea that people don't want to be happy; they want to be satisfied with their life. And I think if this was in that same context, it was like the idea of like you want all these things in a car, but then when you're driving a car, it's not like the same kind of craving. But and I do think that we've had feedback in libraries where, people are satisfied with it. And I think sometimes we think that that's maybe, kind of passive and kind of, want and not really, we want people to be so excited and just love the library. And we love people who love the libraries, but, a lot of people are just satisfied. And then, of course, it gets into the storytelling aspect. But, is there anything else about that kind of, that kind of sentiment that people have used in their branding? Like, is that something where people have used that kind of satisfaction to kind of get over the, newness of things and just focus on kind of the pizzazz and think about the sustainability and the long-term kind of satisfaction with it? Is there anything to that?
Yeah, no, it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because there's this, and I don't know if it's so uniquely American, but I think there is an American element of it that sort of exaggerates this tendency. So we have this very kind of classic framework in decision making called sort of divide between sort of satisficing and optimizing, right? So there's certain areas of our life that we take very seriously. We want to optimize for those, but of course we can't optimize in every single aspect of our lives, because that would just be totally exhausting and we would just be thinking all the time and trying to get the best possible decision. And so most of the things that we do, we just satisfies, right? We try to get to the, a good enough decision. Like, I'm not a big fashion person, but I just kind of put this on before the call and I'm, it's good enough, right? And recently there's been some brands that have sort of put like satisficing at sort of the core of their brand, because it's so, in the American context, kind of so radical, right? Because you think about brands like Nike or Disney or Apple, or, you know, pick any big American brand, and it's like, be the best you can possibly be. It's like, be the best in technology, be the best in athletics. Nike, be the best in Disney entertainment. You know, it's best. But there's really this interesting role for like, let's be very decent in this area, right? So this, I think, unironically, a lot of Japanese brands have sort of taken this road. So one of my favorite brands is called Muji, which is this kind of Japanese lifestyle brand. And their creative director has written how they want people to, you know, go inside of Muji. When you can buy basically anything in a Muji, you can buy clothes, you can buy notebooks, you can buy stationery. And the creative director wants you to go into a Muji, pick something off the shelf, and think about it and say, this will be good in my house. This is a good enough cup. This is a good enough lamp. This is a good enough notebook, right? And it's to, you know, be the background in one's life, not the foreground in one's life.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a really interesting way to think about branding, and think about the products and the brands and the features and the public services potentially in our lives. That it's not this optimized, highly stressful, be the best you can possibly be, you know, be at the top of the mountain kind of thing, but it's to serve a, you know, a general mature role in one's life. And yeah, I mean, I think it's you know, maybe worthy of consideration there.
Yeah, and like Michelle said, is this the new middle? Is this the new
Right,
Goldilocks?
yes.
The new, yeah, the new middle option. So
Yeah, no, there's a lot there, because I think you know, again, I do think there's something uniquely American about it, where we're always trying to optimize in everything we're trying to do. And there's also evidence suggesting that we're trying to optimize, you're trying to be the best. Well, how do you know if you're the best? You have to compare yourself to other people, right? You get into this element of social comparison, which we know now from a psychological standpoint is very, very damaging. It's great when we're at the top and we're looking down on people, but there's by definition only one person on the very top of these things. The gold place finisher is always looking down at everybody else. And so if you're engaging in this kind of social comparison, counterfactual thinking, that's kind of a recipe for being, you know, unhappy and discontented. So the more areas of our life that we can, in your words, Michelle, kind of take a good enough approach, I think that's very healthy. There was a fantastic book that just came out recently called The Good Enough Life, by a philosopher who's kind of making this general argument for many aspects of our lives. It's really, you know, let's be good enough. Let's be good enough parents, be good enough, you know, employees, good enough friends. Let's, you know, try and be very decent human beings, and don't worry about being the best so much. And that's, you know, not a very comprehensive summary of the book, but if you're looking for book recommendations, that's another one I read that had a big influence on me. And yeah, I'd recommend that one as well.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
Michelle, nice, great. Yeah, it's good words to live by. Yep.
Yeah, and like Anna says, yeah, sounds so much healthier than always trying to kill yourself. And you know, I mean, certainly there's something to be said for striving to be the top, but trying to live your life that way all the time for everybody certainly is not doesn't seem achievable, and seems pretty stressful. So well, Matt, thank you so much. Is there anything, I mean, you know, we would love to, you know, thank you for talking about your next book. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about, you know, where we can, you know, connect with you, or anything that you have coming up that we can look at, you know, engaging with, or anything?
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely happy to keep in touch. I try to keep everything centralized to one place, which is my website. So I'll just put that in the chat here, and
Please.
all of my books. I also have a free blog as well. I have two blogs. One is called The Neuroscience of Branding, and it's sort of on branding and marketing topics. The other is The Neuroscience of Human Nature. We're diving into topics generally related to humans and technology and society. And obviously these are applicable to marketing sometimes, but sometimes just kind of stand on their own. Yeah, and feel free to browse if those are of interest. And yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. And before we go, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have, okay, so we have 12. So Matt, choose a number between 1 and 12, and they will win a copy of our book for next month.
Ooh, let's go with 8.
5, 6, 7, 8. Samantha. So Samantha, you get a copy of next month's book, and next month we are going to have. So I don't know if you know Joe Polizzi, and we are going to read Epic Content Marketing by Joe Polizzi. So and he will be joining us next month as well. Yeah, no, thanks again, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing all your insights and working through things. It was just absolutely wonderful, and we wish you all the best. We hope to maybe get you back if we read the next book sometime.
Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me into this wonderful community. I feel like every time I'm in a room full of salespeople or marketers, there's always a little bit of like one-upsmanship and always trying to be the best and be this, but like you guys are all supporting one another. I don't think anybody's trying to have the like if Chris's library does something fantastic, that's not a hit against anybody else's library, Anna. So everyone's just trying to support one another, share best practices, and yeah, it's fantastic community to be a part of. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. And look forward to talking to you all soon. And Matt, have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.